Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and a very warm welcome to another session of Ask Dr. Saleem. In this series, you can ask any questions that you have regarding Islam, Quran, or Ahadith, and you may ask your questions in English or Urdu, but the answers will be given in English just so that we can reach a wider array of audience. To ask your questions, please raise your hand or type in your questions in the chat, and questions will be taken in the order that they are received. However, note that if you've asked one question, please hold off asking any further questions until we reach the second round of questions. And so let's get started. Our first question of the day comes from Saqib Khan. Saqib Khan, please go ahead.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
सर जवाब उर्दू में दरकार है। मेरा सवाल ये है कि अरबी ज़ुबान के लफ्ज़ों के जो औज़ान या पैटर्न्स होते हैं कि फ़लाँ लफ्ज़ फ़लाँ वज़न पर है या फ़लाँ लफ्ज़ फ़लाँ बाब से है, मसलन बाब मुफ़ाला से है, बाब इफ्तियार है, या फ़लाँ लफ्ज़ जो है वो फ़लान के वज़न पर है, फ़ोला के वज़न पर है। तो पूछना ये था कि ये औज़ान या पैटर्न से मुराद क्या होती है? और अगर कोई शख्स अरबी ज़ुबान के लफ्ज़ का मतलब समझता है लेकिन उसे ये नहीं पता कि ये लफ्ज़ किस वज़न पर आया है या किस बाब से आया है, तो इससे अरबी ज़ुबान को समझने के हवाले से क्या फ़र्क वाक़ई होता है? शुक्रिया।
देखिए, अरबी ज़बान जो है उसमें अल्फाज जो हैं वो हुरूफ से बनते हैं, और उन हुरूफ में कुछ बुनियादी अल्फाज होते हैं जिनको औज़ान कहते हैं, जिनकी बुनियाद पे किसी लफ्ज़ का वज़न तय होता है, और कुछ ज़वायद होते हैं जिनसे जो असल में हरूफ के रूट नहीं कहलाते या उनकी सोर्स नहीं कहलाते, बल्कि उनको ज़वायद कहा जाता है। तो वो जो अरबी ज़बान सीखने के तालिब इल्म हैं उनको असातिज़ा या अच्छी किताबें बता देती हैं कि अरबी ज़बान में जो अल्फाज हैं उनके रूट वर्ड्स कौन कौन से हैं, और वो रूट वर्ड्स डिटर्मिन कैसे किए जाते हैं, उनका तयन कैसे किया जाता है। तो ये आप जब ज़बान सीखना शुरू करेंगे तो ये आपको कोई मुश्किल महसूस नहीं होगी, इसलिए कि उसके अंदर बाज़ गिरदानें हैं जो आपको सिखाई जाएंगी, आपको बताया जाएगा कि ये अल्फाज जो हैं इस मुतय्यन पैटर्न पर यानी वो फॉल करते हैं, उस पैटर्न से वो रूगिरदानी नहीं करते, और वो बहुत आसानी के साथ आप समझ लेंगे। इस वक्त मैं आपको ये मुख्तसर बता सकता हूँ, वरना आप तफसील से किसी भी किताब में आपको देखेंगे तो आपको ये बता देंगे कि आपने अगर डिक्शनरी में लफ्ज़ देखना है तो उस लफ्ज़ का जो बुनियादी रूट वर्ड क्या है। यानी रूट वर्ड का मतलब ये होता है कि जिसकी बुनियाद पर एक लफ्ज़ का स्ट्रक्चर कायम होता है, और वो आमतौर से आपको जो अरबी ज़बानी किताबें बता देती हैं, बाद अच्छी लुगात भी बता देती हैं।
Thank you very much. I guess that was all to their question. Ali Haider, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
So my question pertains to basically it's a burning issue of the time, primarily in the youth. So it is basically about I want name is that gay or homosexuality. I'll use an appropriate term that would be the same sex attraction. Sir, I want to ask you how to deal with it. Pehli cheez, I would use the English medium, so it could help others as well. So basically, I believe it's a natural thing. It is something you have inside of you by your very nature, by birth. It is not something like most religious scholars or people say that it is some mental sickness or some ailment. I don't believe in that. It is something you are born with. As early you recognize it, it's a part of you. Secondly, if something is by nature in you, how that is a trial. Like I believe nobody is born with something that is sinful. Like nobody is born an alcoholic, nobody is born a liar. These are the things which later on you develop. If something is born with same-sex attraction, how is that a trial? And if that is a trial, as most of the religious people say it, they term it as a trial, then what options somebody experiencing same-sex attractions, what options that particular person have in this trial? I know a lot of people who are practicing Muslims who want to spend a life submission to Allah Almighty, but this is something you cannot deny. This is something that is very natural. how to deal with that. Religious scholars recommend that marriage is an option. I don't think so. Marriage is an option in the given circumstances because uh, a major part of marriage is the sexual part. Your wife has sexual rights on you, and if you cannot satisfy the sexual needs of your wife, obviously you are betraying somebody. You are, first of all, you have lied to somebody about a major personality part which you have. Secondly, that major personality part, the same sex attraction part, is going to impact your wife. Thirdly, what options does such a person has? Religiously, if we see, I have a lot of research on it. Sexuality seems a gray area. In Quran, we do not clear cut see anything on this issue except for the tale of Komelut, and that in itself is quite ambiguous. Allah Almighty, who has clearly injected that the greatest of the sin that mankind or a civilization can commit, that is shirk. Obviously, it is not same sex attraction. So how to deal with it? What option does such a person have in the given circumstances, and how such a person, without lying to anyone, without betraying to anyone, can spend a life true to Allah Almighty? Thank you.
Right. So this is a very, very important question and a very sensitive topic as well, and something that needs a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth exchange of views. I can present to you my understanding of the Quran and religion as I have understood it. So you see, let's start off with the very basics. As far as the union of two people is concerned, the Quran, according to its own scheme, as is, as the Almighty has practically demonstrated it, goes through the fact that when the whole mankind started, it started off with Adam and Eve. So basically, it was an opposite gender, two opposite genders who came together to create a family. So the basic family structure in religion, if we study history, especially because the fact that the first, Adam and Eve, the progenitors of mankind, they were of opposite gender, and it was because of them that they procreated and mankind began. So the union which the Almighty in His own scheme envisages is that of two opposite genders. And of course, had it been something else, so what I'm saying is that we need to try to understand the scheme of God. So if we understand the scheme of God, we'll see that He did not create two Adams, He did not create two Eves. On the contrary, He created Adam and Eve, and both, of course, having a different gender, belong to the same species, which actually gives us this basic understanding that the way the Almighty wants this world to develop in the form of a family unit, because this is the basic building unit of a society, is that two people from the opposite gender should come together, enter into a marital contract, procreate, and produce children. And of course, the whole system of mankind would move forward as a result. Now, of course, comes this question that what if a person is born with this same-sex attraction, as you have said, and he or she does not feel any inclination for the opposite gender? So the first thing that I'd like to point out here is that the solution which is often given is that, well, you can marry off such people and hopefully this inclination will change. I do not favor this at all. I think this would be a it will produce disastrous results. It would be counterproductive. Because when a person does not have that inclination for the opposite gender, and if you force that thing to happen, it's just going to, complicate whole matters. And as you have said, it would be a very, telling thing that you've not even disclosed it to your wife maybe, or to your prospective husband, whatever the case may be. And as a result, it could be something of a dishonesty as well. So that is not the right solution. I would not agree with it. So the question is, then what then is the solution? So let's now discuss this in a little bit more detail. So you can see, and if you look at people, and if you talk to doctors, sexologists who have studied this subject, they'll tell you that, they are still not fully 100% confirmed if this is a genetically inspired phenomenon. So as far as I have read, and I do try to keep myself abreast of all these scientific developments, there is not, you cannot say that there is this consensus or even any certainty that people are born with this inclination. And it is, of course, as we can see, there are things that we can at times clearly say that these inclinations, they come into existence because of certain societal pressures, certain things that you might even know at that time, which are developing when you're growing up. Let's say you're a 1 year old or 2 year old, and your own, I mean, there are a lot of things that we are not fully aware of that come into play, and they are able to determine our course of action. So, as far as science is concerned, today we are not in a 100% position to say that this is something which is genetically compelled or we are born with it. But let us suppose, for the sake of discussion, that this is something which is a phenomena, whether it is genetically acquired or whether it's something that you acquire from your environment. It doesn't matter, because in both cases, a person has to deal with it. So the question is not as much as if it is something which is internally acquired or person is born with it, as it is with the question that what should we do when such an attraction or such a situation results. So my inclination here, once again, is the same as what most scholars say, that basically this is, and if you look at things, that we have different inclinations with which we are born. You'll find people who are compulsive liars. We have people who are compulsive killers. They are serial killers. They are kleptomaniacs. They are pedophiles. They are people who have this inclination so strongly built in them that they just cannot resist them. So I'm not debating the origin at the moment. So I was just referring to that origin, just to let you know that even science is not 100%, I mean, not 100% confirmed whether it's genetically compelled or not. But as I said, let us take it for the sake of discussion that this is an issue. So just as a person who is a pedophile or a person who is genetically compelled to steal things, if you look at a lot of people who are genetically compelled to do certain heinous acts, so that should not give them a license to practice those acts, but just because that is something you feel that you are born with. I mean, you have the feeling to do anything you like, but you see, everything has to be ethically and morally correct. So if you look at the scheme of the Almighty, in which it has clearly said that a family comes into being through the union of a man and a woman, and it also says that in Surah Ma'arij and Surah Mu'minun, that the only way that you can satisfy your sexual desire is through the opposite gender. When it says illa ala azwajihim, which means that they should only confine themselves to their wives. So this gives us a second tier of guidance, that as far as sexuality is concerned, apart from the fact that if you would like to gratify yourself through self-gratification, that's another option. But if you have to satisfy it through some other person, then it has to be your wife. It cannot be someone outside wedlock. So if these two things are clear, that as far as marriage is concerned, it can only take place between opposite genders, as we see the scheme of God. And as far as the fact is concerned that when a husband and when a person has to have some sexual contact with anyone, then the Quran says that it cannot be with anyone except with his wife. So this again guides us further, that if sexual desire has to be satisfied through someone else, then it has to be your wife. But then that does not preclude the option that you can do it on your own in the form of masturbation or self-gratification. This is something which has not been prohibited at all, as is generally misunderstood. And then, of course, is the question that how should you deal with this desire? So, as I said, that that desire, when it takes such force in you that you need to satisfy it, then the only way, perhaps in this situation, is to do it by self-gratification. And the other thing is that if this is something that is not going away, or maybe you're not able to control it, then as I said, it should not be a reason to make it a license in any way. A person can have a very strong inclination to do something, but if that something is that you need to satisfy your sexual urge through the same gender, then this has to be taken as a command of God, that God has not allowed it to happen, and it does not want it to happen. And the reason, of course, that it has not allowed it to happen is also very clear, that the Almighty wants a family system to evolve through the union of a husband and wife, not to the union of two men or two women, because of course that would not produce the family on right footings, and neither would it create the later or the next generation, which is of course one of the products of marriage. Now, of course, another very important thing is that when a person who is going through these urges, and he is trying to fight them and he's struggling through them, Again, this is something that we have to be very sympathetic to such people. We have to be very compassionate to such people. We must not think that they are lesser people in any way. And they might be going through their own struggles. They might be going through their own problems in life. And at the same time, I think one of the evils of our society is that when a person declares himself that he has this urge, then he becomes the most hated person in the society. Now, this is something which is absolutely not correct. It is intolerable that you regard someone who has declared himself with a different sexual orientation to be a person who is despicable. I mean, you can have a difference of opinion with the person, just as you can have this difference with any other issue in religion. You can have the issue of sexual orientation also discussed as a difference of opinion, but to condemn such people or to, in a way, point fingers at them and regard them to be untouchable, as is the case in our many Muslim societies, this is something that has to be rectified. I do accept this fact. There are so many people who have this attraction, they experience this attraction, but at the same time, they are extremely pious people. They are good in human beings as far as humanity is concerned, as far as their obligations towards God is concerned. All these things they carry out in a very perfect way, except for this. So I think they need to understand that just as if you have this urge to kill people, which can be an inbuilt urge, that cannot give you the license to start off and go on upon a killing spree. In a very similar way, if you feel this urge, whether it is genetically acquired or whether it is something that you acquired from your atmosphere, because you cannot satisfy that sexual urge except through your wife, in the case of a man. So therefore, you would need to go to some other practices in order to satisfy it. And of course, self-gratification is one of those practices in which you can just release that energy that is built up in you. But you cannot be allowed to marry, for example, or live in a union with the same gender, because of course that would be against the scheme of the Almighty. So that is how I understand this complex topic, and I am prepared to discuss more.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have a bunch of chat questions. So the first one asks, could you please explain verses 38 and 40 of Surah Hajj while explaining the tafsir of Surah Baqarah, verses 114 and 115. Ghamidi sir says that in this, not only worship places of Muslims is mentioned, but in Surah Hajj, the worship places of Jews, Christians, and all worship places of all religions which existed at the time by the name are mentioned, and Allah has given the command for jihad that whoever destroys worship places, their hands should be stopped, because this is against humanities, and whoever remembers God in whatever way they want, the holiness of them should be maintained. So no human has the right to worship another person's worship place. And also about Prophet Muhammad allowing people of Najran to pray on Sunday in the Mosque of Allah, when the people of Najran, they used to worship Isa alayhi salam. Could you please explain these?
I don't think it requires any explanation. These are self-explanatory phenomena, I would say, because you see, as far as the destruction of temples or synagogues or churches or mosques is concerned, all of these places are holy in their nature, because these are places in which God is worshipped. Remember, Abrahamic religions, they are all basically monotheistic in nature. Yes, there are deviations. They can be called as deviant monotheists, but in no way can they regarded to be polytheistic in nature. So therefore, protecting the worship places of all religions is something of a obligation of an Islamic state. So, and at the same time, the example that you have referred to, when the Nazarenes of Najran, they came over and they wanted to worship the God in the manner that they are used to, and they asked God's permission, the Prophet's permission, and he said that, why would you like to go out? Why don't you do it right here in the mosque? Because it's a place of God's worship, and they ended up doing it there. So it's just like telling people that these mosques are meant for all types of people. It's not just for Muslims. Any person who would like to worship God, he has this freedom to come and do so. I think this is a very golden example which he set in his own times, and it is a shining example, in fact, in which he was giving them this inspiration as well, that as far as worshipping God is concerned, you don't need to go and necessarily to your own place. It's same all over. And if you are here in the mosque of God, why don't you start worshiping him here? So I think that this is something of a inspirational move by him, and something which we have also not only gravely misunderstood, but we have started to behave in the opposite way, in which on many occasions we do not allow non-Muslims to come to mosques, and if they are allowed to come to mosques, then definitely we do not allow them to go to the Holy Kaaba or the house of God. And if you go there, you'll find there is caption written over there that beyond this point no non-Muslim can enter. And this is one of the reasons of this proscription is because of not understanding a verse of the Quran which says innamal mushrikuna najis, which means that these idolaters, they are filthy in their faith, and after this certain time they should not come and visit the Kaaba. So remember, these idolaters were being spoken of, against whom the truth had been ultimately delivered, and they were absolutely convinced of their polytheism, but they still insisted that we still will believe in more than one God. So that was a very special category of people about which the Quran said that they will not be allowed in the mosque of God, because they acknowledge one God as their creator, but still out of arrogance or out of any other reason, they still associate partners with him. So this was meant for such, very specific category of people who lived in the times of Prophet Muhammad. Again, after his passing away and other things being done, this is something that has to be understood was meant for those people. As far as other non-Muslims are concerned, who have not even perhaps heard the message of Islam, who would like to come closer to Islam, and for that they would like to come to the Kaaba and the Holy Mosque to experience that spirituality. Everyone, when he goes there, I'm sure you would know, whoever has gone there, which would vouch for this, that there is a very special feeling when you visit the house of God. It engulfs you, and it gives you a very special orientation regarding God. So instead of opening up these mosques and these places for non-Muslims, we have done the opposite. So I think that I've just tried to explain and make sense of these Quranic verses, which have already inspired so many other people. But as I said, because of not understanding one verse of Surah Tawbah, which says that these idolaters are filthy in faith, we have extended this non-entry of that particular category to all other non-Muslims, and as a result, we have made a mess of these directives.
Thank you for that explanation, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, the state is responsible for only two things. One is the implementation of prayer, and again, two, revenge of action taken against people's lives and their properties. But in another area, people say that prayer is a matter of relationship between Allah and the servant, so the government shouldn't interfere in it. And prayer is the right of Allah, so the individual is only answerable to Allah. So how can the state enforce prayer?
You see, if you study Surah Tawbah, it says that the idolaters of those times, in the times of the Prophet, that if they were to be spared from the death punishment, which was destined for them because they had deliberately ended up associating partners with God, and the punishment of polytheism in the presence of God's messenger is death. So the Quran said the only way that they can evade this is that they pray and give zakat. So these were the two directives which actually qualified them to be legally called as Muslims. So if you would like to be legally called as a Muslim, then this is something which the state can do, because this is a symbol. This is your outward manifestation that now you live as a Muslim. So for such people whose lives had to be spared, this directive was implemented, and you can very well see that for normal Muslims against whom no such action has to be taken, for them this has to hold automatically. So as far as enforcing the prayer is concerned, this enforcement has their own. They can have their own choice. If they would not like it to be enforced, then legally they cannot be given the rights of a Muslim, which he or she would have. If they have to declare themselves to be the legal Muslim, then this is basically the minimum requirement that they must profess. After professing faith, they must show their profession of faith by praying to him and by giving him zakat. So when it says that a Muslim state has this authority, it does not mean that it is at all times, it's an obligation that it should do it. All that it says is that it can go as far as to do it. Maybe at times it chooses not to do it, but it has the authority to go as far as to do it on certain occasions, and if this occasion, the occasion demands that it should be done, then of course it should be done. But then, as I said, there could be a lot of instances in which this extreme action is not even needed because people are being educated and people are being slowly brought closer to Islam. So, of course, some lenience can also be shown. But if at some instance, after showing lenience and after educating people, if a government insists that if you would like yourself to be called a Muslim, then you must outwardly also show that you're a Muslim, then if it wants, it can enforce this. As I said, if it depends on the situation, it can go as far as enforcing it. But as I said, it's not a mandatory thing.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, I like to play badminton with my husband, and we usually play in a public park or on the road. But recently we were thinking if it's okay to do so as there are strangers around and I'm often jumping and running around while playing. Can you please clarify if it's okay religiously?
Yeah, I think, well, maybe you have, your own modesty has beckons you to do so when you're playing. Of course, at times it is not appropriate. You're in an appropriate situation at times, so maybe it's more appropriate and more, it's better if you could do it maybe in your house or some place in which you're confined to your husband's company only, or a situation in which people are busy in some activity. For example, if you're doing it some activity like playing badminton in a club, so because all people are basically involved in that activity, so you don't stand out when you jump around. So when you do it on the roads or on such places which are public places, then you do stand out, and that could be, of course, something which might be against that modesty that every woman has.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shabnam, you're up next. Please go ahead.
थैंक यू मरियम सर अभी आपने गेज और होमोस के क्वेश्चन के रिप्लाई में डिविएटेड ह्यूमन एटीट्यूड्स का जिक्र किया जिसमें पीडोफाइल्स और ये सीरियल किलर्स तो लाइक सर मुझे लगता है कि सर ये क्वेश्चन राइज करता है कि ये जो डिविएटेड ह्यूमन एटीट्यूड्स हैं ये मोस्टली या तो जेनेटिक होते हैं या अगर एक्वायर्ड भी हो तो स्पेशली जो पीडोफाइल्स हैं वो मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स वो खुद भी चाइल्ड अब्यूज से गुजरे होते हैं जिसकी वजह से वो इस तरफ आते हैं और सीरियल किलर्स भी एक कंपल्सरी एक उनका एक वो अर्ज होती है तो सर उनकी ट्रीटमेंट पर क्यों नहीं फोकस किया जाता इंस्टेड ऑफ पनिशिंग देम एंड कंडेमिंग देम ओनली
पनिशमेंट उनको ट्रीटमेंट की तरफ लाजमन फोकस करना चाहिए और कंडेम नहीं करना चाहिए उनको बताना चाहिए कि ऐसा आदमी जो है ही इज सिक इन हिज माइंड एंड ही नीड्स मेडिकल हेल्प सो जितने भी इस तरह के मामलात होते हैं अगर वो वक्त पे रिपोर्ट हो जाए देखें ना होता ही है कि वो नुकसान करने के बाद वो रिपोर्ट होते हैं एक सीरियल किलर पकड़ा ही नहीं जाता वो 50 लोगों को मार देता है उसके बाद वो पकड़ा जाता है तो वो तो नुकसान तो हो गया असल में ये तो तभी पॉसिबल है ना कि जब बहुत पहले आप इस एलिमेंट को इस सिकनेस को भांप लें और फिर जो पेरेंट्स हैं या जो उनके लवाकिन हैं उसका इलाज करवाएं तो होना तो यही चाहिए कि जितना ज़्यादा साइकेट्रिस्ट या साइकोलॉजिस्ट उनको हेल्प कर सकें उनको करनी चाहिए लेकिन जब ये सिचुएशन पैदा हो जाती है जब हाथ से मतलब काबू से हाथ से चले जाते हैं और ये यानी सारे जराइम वो कर देते हैं और वो फिर कानून की जब हदूद में आते हैं तो फिर तो कानून अपना निफाज करेगा
Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead.
Dr. Shehzad. Dr. Shehzad, you were talking about homosexual and lesbians. I just wanted to point out, आप सही कह रहे हैं I don't know if it has been proven scientifically or medically that some people are genetically are born or inclined. But I can personally say that I have seen families where there are children who in their childhood, if you watch them, they have been inclined towards the opposite sex. So I think we have to be fair to them that I don't think it's always that they go in for someone and then they keep on doing that act and it becomes a habit. I think can we also say that there could be some medical reasons and we could help them that way or let them be the way they are so that they have a
yes,
right
of course.
to be
I think that if medical help can be provided I mean, that is something that can be done without even asking because you see, for that, a patient has to admit that this is something that is of an ailment and it needs to be corrected. So you see, there are some who don't even think that it's an ailment and it's something that needs correction and so therefore they do not opt for that treatment. But if they think, I mean, if a doctor, a sexologist are people basically who deal with this subject. So if a sexologist thinks that he can or she can help such an individual by creating the right sense of sexual desires the way it should happen, if there is some medical treatment, if at all, then of course there is no reason why we should not go for it.
Dr. Shehzad, I know of two people who are married, who have been involved for about 7 years, got married, and they've even had a child by surrogacy. I have seen them, they're extremely happily married, and they don't feel they're doing anything wrong. Of course, they don't live in Pakistan, they live in the United States. Maybe that it makes it easier for them not to have to hide their inclinations. So, I sometimes wonder if we are very fair to people in Pakistan who could be inclined this way.
So what is the question?
The question is that आप जैसे फरमा रहे थे कि it hasn't been proven medically that people
Right.
can bond like this, but as I said कि मेरा जो experience हुआ है और ये जिनसे जिनकी मैं बात कर रही हूँ, they are related. So इनको तो मैंने personally देखा है कि and they are now married and they are happy and they got the child and so I think they were born like that.
So as I said, I mean, even if they, I mean, I went on and answered this question by saying that suppose that it is correct that they are born like this. So what? So you see, if you are born with a particular inclination whose expression is not correct, that doesn't mean that you have the license to do it. I gave you this that example of a serial killer or a kleptomaniac, a compulsive thief or a compulsive liar. And if you allow me, I can give you another example. People who would like to have extramarital relations with women or with men, so to speak, women having to do with men and men having to do with women. This is also a very strong urge, which is found in many men and women, that they are married, but they still look outside the wedlock, the wedding bond to satisfy their urge with other men and women. So if that urge exists, what should be done? I mean, you need to curb it. You need to check it. So the existence of an urge does not give you the license to practice that urge. That was what I was trying to explain. So regardless of the origin of that urge, regardless of where that desire came from, whether it was inborn or whether it was acquired, that is immaterial. The thing is that if the expression of desire of something is not correct or religiously incorrect, then we need to check it. As simple as that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Faraz Ahmed, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, Mohammed, if you're back, then let's take Mohammed first.
Okay.
Assalamu
Walaikum assalam.
alaikum. ये था है जैसे हमारा ईमान है हमारी हमें अल्लाह और रसूल सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम पे अपनी जान से बढ़ के प्यार है और हमारी जान भी उनमें कुर्बान है। एक तो ये है। देखिए ऐसे में कुरान पाक में ये भी है तुम्हें अपनी जान बचाने के लिए ऊपर भी एहतियात करना बड़े को कर लो। तो इस बारे में मुझे थोड़ी सी कंफ्यूजन है। एक हम कहते हैं हमारी अल्लाह और रसूल में जान कुर्बान है और कुरान पाक में कुछ और हुक्म है।
आई एम सॉरी, आपकी पूरी बात नहीं समझ। आप क्या ये पूछ रहे हैं कि अल्लाह ताला और उसके रसूल पर जब हम कहते हैं कि हमारी जान कुर्बान है, तो इससे मुराद क्या है?
हाँ जी, मैं ये पूछ रहा हूँ, ये भी पूछ रहा हूँ कि कुरान पाक में है कि अगर तुम्हें अपनी जान में जानी बने तो ऊपर एहतियात कर लो। इस बारे में मुझे थोड़ी सी कंफ्यूजन थी।
जी, ये तो है कुरान मजीद में, और ये कहा गया इल्ला मन उक्रिहा व क़ल्बुहु मुत्मइन्नुन बिल ईमान। अगर आपको अपनी जान का खतरा है और आपको कलमा कुफर करना पड़ता है, तो अगर आपका दिल ईमान पर मुतमइन है तो जान बचाने के लिए आप ये कह सकते हैं। ये तो कुरान मजीद में मौजूद है।
हाँ, मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा हूँ, हमें अल्लाह के रसूल में जान कुर्बान है, तो इसमें ये कुर्बान करना हुआ हमने अपनी जान बचा ली, ये मैं पूछना चाह रहा था।
नहीं, ये अल्लाह के रसूल पे जान कुर्बान है कि कहाँ पे आया कुरान मजीद में? कुरान मजीद में ऐसी कोई आयत नहीं है। कुरान मजीद में तो ये आया है कि आपको यानी आपकी जो अपनी जिंदगी है उसकी तरजीह होनी चाहिए कि जो दीन अल्लाह ताला ने अपने पैगंबर के जरिए से भेजा है, तो आपको वो सबसे अजीज होना चाहिए। ये तो बात बयान हुई है कि औला बिल मुमिनीना लिअनफुसिहिम, यानी अल्लाह ताला कहते हैं कि पैगंबर जो है वो एक मोमिन को सबसे अजीज होना चाहिए, अपने जान से भी ज्यादा अजीज। वो इस मफहूम में है कि जो दीन वो लेके आया है, जिस दीन के पहलू से उसने आपकी तालीम दी है, वो तालीम आपके लिए सबसे बरतर होनी चाहिए। इस लिहाज से तो ठीक कह रहे हैं बिल्कुल।
यही कंफ्यूजन थी कि अल्लाह रसूल में जान कुर्बान करने के क्या मुराद ली गई, मैंने यही पूछा।
जी, अच्छा।
Thank you very much. Sir Faraz Ahmed, please go ahead.
السلام علیکم ڈاکٹر صاحب، ایک سوال یہ پوچھنا تھا کہ یہ ابھی حج کے جیسے درمیان میں کیا ہم احرام چینج کر سکتے ہیں، یا اگر کر سکتے ہیں تو کن کنڈیشنز میں چینج کیا جا سکتا ہے؟ مرد اور عورت دونوں کے حوالے سے بتائیے.
عورت کا تو احرام دیکھیں ہوتا ہی نہیں ہے، صرف احرام مردوں ہی کا ہوتا ہے، اور وہ کوئی میڈیکل کنڈیشن ایسی ہو جائے، کوئی ایسی جو ڈاکٹر ایڈوائز کرے کہ بھئی اب ان کا آپریشن ہونا ہے، یا کوئی ایسی اور آفت آ گئی ہے جس میں اس کا چارہ نہیں ہے، تو ظاہر ہے پھر تو ہم کریں گے. لیکن اس کے علاوہ اگر کوئی اور حالات ہیں تو اس پہ آپ کو نہیں چینج کرنا، سوائے اس کے کہ آپ نے احرام پھر اتار ہی دیا ہے. اگر آپ نے احرام اتارنا ہے، دوبارہ آپ نے احرام باندھنا ہے، نئے یعنی آپ نے پہلے عمرہ کیا، پھر آپ نے احرام کھول دیا، دوبارہ آپ نے احرام باندھا، یہ تو ایک بالکل ہے جو پاسبل کیا جا سکتا ہے. لیکن اس کے علاوہ آپ محض یہ محسوس کر رہے ہیں جی کہ آپ کو گرمی لگ رہی ہے، یا آپ کے کپڑے گندے ہو گئے ہیں، آپ کا احرام گندا ہو گیا ہے، تو یہ کافی ریزن نہیں ہے. کیونکہ احرام بذات خود جو پابندی آپ پہ عائد کرتا ہے وہ یہی ہے کہ ان 8-9 دنوں کے لیے، یا جو بھی آپ نے ٹائم کے لیے احرام باندھا ہے، یہ بنیادی طور پہ اصل میں آپ کو یہ تعلیم دیتا ہے کہ آپ کچھ عرصے کے لیے دنیا سے کٹ گئے ہیں اور اللہ سے جڑ گئے ہیں، یہاں تک کہ آپ کو اپنے کپڑوں کا بھی ہوش نہیں رہا، اور آپ اپنے بال بھی نہیں کاٹیں گے، آپ اپنے کوئی خوشبو بھی نہیں لگائیں گے، دنیا کی تمام جو اس طرح کی زینتوں کی چیزیں کو آپ ترک کر دیں گے. تو یہ کچھ عرصے کی کیفیت ہے جو اللہ تعالیٰ چاہتے ہیں کہ آپ پہ طاری ہو جائے، کہ آپ ڈیووٹڈ ہیں اللہ تعالیٰ کی کاز کے لیے فار سم ٹائم. سو اگر
لیکن
آپ کو اس
خواتین
کی فلاسفی کا پتہ ہوگا تو پھر آپ کو یہ سمجھ میں آ جائے گی کہ صرف غیر معمولی سچویشن میں یہ الاؤڈ ہے کہ اس کو تبدیل کیا جائے.
لیکن خواتین کے لیے آپ کا کہنا ہے کہ احرام کی پابندی نہیں ہوگی؟
ان کے یہاں تو احرام کی کوئی پابندی سرے سے ہی نہیں ہے، خواتین کا تو احرام ہوتا ہی نہیں ہے، احرام تو ہے
پھر
ہی
وہ جو
مردوں کے.
پہنتی ہیں تو وہ کی چینج کر سکتی ہیں، مطلب جیسے عرفات
جی
میں
جی
چینج کر لیں، مینا
ظاہر
میں
ہے،
چینج کر لیں،
بالکل، جی جی
کر سکتی ہیں.
جی.
ٹھیک ہے، شکریہ.
Thank you. We have a question from the chat that asks, in Google Translate, it's asking, what's the difference between a sect and a school of thought? That's the ending line.
Between a sect and so you see there is a big difference between a sect and a school of thought. When a person believes in a school of thought, he is not regarding that school of thought to be the final word, which cannot be changed, which cannot be reinterpreted, which cannot be revisited. It's a point of view. But when something becomes a sect, then the declaration of that sect is that we have the ultimate truth with us. We will not change that truth, become what may. And everyone who does not act according to our understanding needs to be corrected. So you become more self-righteousness when you become a sect, and you regard yourselves to be true in all sorts of situations without any exception. But when a person belongs to a school of thought, it only means that he or she, until the time any error can be proven in that school of thought, until that time happens, he or she is going to subscribe to that school of thought and move along in life. But as soon as she or he gets to know that there is something wrong, he or she will rethink. But in the case of a sect, that rethinking process is something that is non-existent.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. Muhammad Jamil, please go ahead. All right, we'll move on. Habiba Zafar, please go ahead.
السلام علیکم سر. میرا
وعلیکم
سوال
السلام.
یہ ہے کہ آئی فیل لائک کہ میں جو ہے فرض نمازیں پڑھ لیتی ہوں جتنے بھی فرائض ہیں، بٹ اس سے زیادہ کہ میں سنتے پڑھوں یا نوافل پڑھوں، مجھے ایسا لگتا ہے کہ میری اللہ میاں سے لو لینگویج یہ ہے کہ میں اللہ میاں کی مخلوق کو خوش کروں. آئی ہیو اسکلز جس سے میں اللہ میاں کی مخلوق کو خوش کرتی ہوں. میرے پاس ایسی اپرچونیٹیز بھی زیادہ سے زیادہ آتی جاتی ہیں. تو کیا ہم اللہ میاں کے اتنے قریب اللہ کی بندوں کی ہیلپ کر کے ہو سکتے ہیں جتنا ہم عبادت کر کے ہو سکتے ہیں؟ بیکاز آنیسٹلی آئی فیل لائک اگر میں 3 فرض مغرب کے پڑھ رہی ہوں تو میں بہت دھیان سے پڑھوں گی، لیکن اس کے بعد مجھے اپنے کام پہ واپس آنا ہے، اپنے لوگوں کے انٹریکشن پہ واپس آنا ہے، لوگوں کے مسئلے تھوڑے سے ان کو سارٹ آؤٹ کرنا ہے، تھوڑے سے ان کے لیے ایک شولڈر بننا ہے. تو کیا ہم یہ کام کر کے بھی اللہ کے اتنے قریب ہو سکتے ہیں؟
بالکل ہو سکتے ہیں، اور اس میں نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی ہمیں روایت بھی موجود ہے جس سے معلوم ہوتا ہے کہ اخلاق میں اچھا ہونا، کردار میں اچھا ہونا بھی آپ کو اللہ تعالیٰ کے قریب لے جا سکتا ہے جتنا نوافل یا وہ ریچولز کے جو آپ فرض کے علاوہ کرتے ہیں.
اوکے سر، تھینک یو سو مچ. جزاک اللہ.
Thank you. Muhammad Jamil, please go ahead. Okay, Umar Farouk, please go ahead.
جی میرا یہ سوال تھا، یہ سورہ یونس کی آیت نمبر 47 ہے کہ ہر امت کا ایک رسول ہے، پھر جب ان کے پاس ان کا رسول آیا تو ان کے درمیان انصاف سے فیصلہ کیا گیا. اس کی مجھے کبھی تھوڑی سی کنفیوژن یہ ہوتا ہے کہ یعنی بہت سارے جگہ ایسا یعنی ہے کہ یہ رسول نہیں ہے. کیا یہ حضرت ابراہیم سے پہلے کے دور کا بیان ہے، یا یہ کہ مطلب اس کے بعد تو زیادہ تر رسول جو ہے وہ مڈل ایسٹ اسی سائڈ پہ آتے رہے.
نہیں،
یا
وہ
یہ اس
تمام
کا
انسانیت
اس
کا
کو
بیان ہے. اس کا تعلق حضرت ابراہیم سے بالکل بھی نہیں ہے. بلکہ کہا گیا کہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے جو امتیں دنیا میں پیدا کی حضرت آدم سے لے کے ان سب میں ایک رسول کو بھیجا جس نے ان پہ حق واضح کیا اور ان کی دنیا میں ان کا حساب کتاب ہو گیا. یہ حضرت ابراہیم سے متعلق نہیں ہے، یہ تو اللہ تعالیٰ کا عمومی قانون بیان ہو رہا ہے.
نہیں، یعنی میرا بیسیکلی سوال یہ تھا کہ یعنی جیسے ایک تو موجودہ دور میں تو یہ اپلائی نہیں ہو رہا، اور دوسری یہ کہ اس
نہیں،
سے
وہ
پہلے کے دور میں
مراد ہے
بھی
ختم نبوت تک. دیکھیں جب نبوت ختم ہو جائے گی اس کے بعد تو نہیں نہ ہوگا. یعنی اس
اوکے
آیت کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ جب تک نبوت ختم نہیں ہو گئی تو اللہ تعالیٰ نے ہر قوم میں ایک رسول بھیجا. جب نبوت ہی ختم ہو گئی تو اس کے بعد ظاہر ہے یہ کام ویسے ہی ختم ہو گیا. وہ تو ختم نبوت والی آیت نے بتا دیا کہ یہ جو پورے کا پورا معاملہ ہے یہ دور نبوت کی بات کی جا رہی ہے. دور نبوت میں اللہ تعالیٰ نے یعنی جس دوران اللہ تعالیٰ نبی بھیج رہے تھے اور ختم نبوت
جی
ابھی
جی
واقع نہیں ہوئی تھی، اس وقت تک اللہ تعالیٰ نے ہر قوم میں ایک رسول بھیجا ہے.
صحیح. لیکن یہ تھوڑا سا مجھے کنفیوژن ہوتا ہے کہ جب حضرت ابراہیم سے آنورڈ جو رسول ہے وہ تو زیادہ تر مڈل ایسٹ میں آئے سارے، یا
ہاں تو وہ
یا
اصل میں
ہماری
میں نے اس
انفارمیشن
لیے
میں
عرض کیا
نہیں
نا
ہے.
کہ یہ ان سے متعلق نہیں ہے. یہ آیت تنہا ان سے متعلق نہیں ہے، یہ تو ان سے
اچھا،
پہلے سے ہی معاملہ چلا آ رہا ہے. ان سے پہلے بھی جو
صحیح
رسول تھے ان سب کے ساتھ ہی معاملہ ہے.
صحیح صحیح. ٹھیک ہے، تھینک یو.
Thank you, Mohammed Jamil. Please go ahead.
جی السلام علیکم.
وعلیکم السلام.
جی سر، میں ایک قرآن میں ایک مسئلہ گرانیک کے نام سے جانا جاتا ہے، اس کے بارے میں تھوڑا سا میں جاننا چاہ رہا ہوں.
مسئلہ غرانیق کی آپ بات کر رہے ہیں؟
جی جی.
تو یہ تو آپ سورہ نجم جب پڑھیں گے نا اور آپ کسی بھی مفسر کو پڑھ لیں تو اس میں اس کو انہوں نے تفصیل سے بیان کیا ہوا ہے. ایک ضعیف روایت ہے جس کی بنیاد پہ یہ واقعہ مشہور ہو گیا کہ جب نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم سورہ نجم پڑھ رہے تھے تو اس پڑھنے کے دوران شیطان نے ان پہ ایک الہام کیا اور الہام میں ان کو یہ کہا کہ تلک الغرانیق العلا و انا لعبادتہ یا شفاعتہ لترتجا، جس کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ یہ جو دیویاں ہیں ان کی عبادت جو ہے یہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے اس کا حکم دیا ہے، یہ محمود چیز ہے. تو یہ ایسی ہے کہ جیسے اس سورہ کے دوران سورہ تو اللہ تعالیٰ نازل کر رہے تھے الگ سے، لیکن یہ چند اور آیتیں ہیں کہ جو شیطان کی طرف سے نازل ہو گئیں اور نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم پہ یہ انہی کو آپ وہ کہتے ہیں نا جو سیٹرنک ورسز کا آپ نے نام سنا ہوگا، وہ انہی کی
جی جی
طرف اشارہ وہ کرتی ہیں. لیکن یہ روایت بالکل کمزور روایت ہے. ہمارے ہاں یہ حدیث کے معیار پہ پوری بھی نہیں اترتی. جو محدثین ہیں آپ اس کو ان کو دیکھ سکتے ہیں، اور اگر آپ اس کو تفصیل سے جاننا چاہتے ہیں تو اس پہ سب سے اچھا نوٹ اگر آپ اردو زبان میں دیکھنا چاہیں تو مولانا مودودی صاحب کی جو تفہیم القرآن ہے اس میں اگر آپ سورہ نجم کی جو یہ شروع کا حصہ دیکھیں گے نا تو اس میں انہوں نے اس روایت کو پورا بیان بھی کر دیا ہے اور اس کو تنقید بھی کر کے بتا دیا ہے کہ یہ کتنی کمزور روایت ہے.
لیکن یہ جو سورہ حج میں بھی آیات آتی ہیں کہ وہ جو
ہاں
اس
وہ
کے
تو
ساتھ
حج
اس
میں
کو
آئے.
ریلیٹ کرتے تھے.
جی جی، وہ اس لیے ریلیٹ کرتے ہیں نا اس کی شان نزول کے طور پہ. وہ کہتے ہیں کہ جب بھی کسی رسول نے اللہ تعالیٰ کے حق میں بات کرنے کی کوشش کی ہے تو ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ شیطان اس کے خلاف پروپیگنڈا کرتا ہے. تو لوگوں کا خیال ہے کہ وہ پروپیگنڈے کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ اس طرح کی آیتیں الہام کرتا ہے. دونوں الگ الگ باتیں ہیں. یہ تو ایک عام بات ہے جو سورہ حج میں بیان ہوئی ہے کہ جب بھی اللہ تعالیٰ کے جو نبی ہیں وہ اللہ تعالیٰ کی راہ میں اٹھتے ہیں تو شیطان تو اڑنگے ان کی راہ میں ڈالتا ہے، لیکن وہ اڑنگے ڈالنے کا کیا مطلب ہے؟ اس کو ڈالنے کا یہ مطلب ہے کہ ان کو آزمائش سے گزرنا پڑتا ہے، وہ لوگوں کو ان کے خلاف اکساتا ہے. اس کا یہ مطلب تو نہیں ہے نا کہ وہ آیتیں الہام کرتا ہے. یہ تو لوگوں نے جوڑ لیا اس کو اس سے، ورنہ وہ آیت تو محض یہ بیان کری ہے سورہ حج کی، وہ ایک مختلف بات بیان کر رہی ہے.
جی اس کی کوئی سینس تو بنتے نہیں. سورہ نجم کا سورہ حج کا ان کا کانٹیکسٹ ہی بالکل ڈیفرنٹ
ہاں
لگتا ہے
کوئی
پڑھنے سے.
تعلق نہیں آپس میں.
تو
جی
وہ
ہاں.
اس طرح سے پتہ نہیں کس طرح سے ریلیٹ پتہ نہیں وہ سمجھ نہیں آتی ہے کہ کس طرح سے اس کو ریلیشن میں لے آئے. اور اسٹینک ورسز جیسی جو ہے
جی
وہ
ہاں،
ہم پہ پھر باتیں اس طرح سے ہوتی ہیں.
بس
اور
یہ
دوسرا
ضعیف
سر
قصے
ایک میں
کہانی ہے.
یہ پوچھنا تھا کہ جیسے جی جی جیسے فراہی اسکول آف تھاٹ میں ایک نظم قرآن جو ہے یعنی یہ ڈسکور ہوا ہے. تو اب جب ہم فراہی اسکول آف تھاٹ کی بات کرتے ہیں تو اس میں جو کانٹیکسٹ ہے پورا کا پورا اور ایک نظم کے طور پر اس کو جانا جاتا ہے اور آیات جو ہیں ان کو اس طرح سے انٹرپریٹ کیا جاتا ہے کہ جس طرح سے وہ مثلا کہ شان نزول ہمیں بتاتے ہیں ٹریڈیشنل ویو سے، اس میں اور فراہی اسکول میں تھوڑا فرق ہے. تو جو یہ اس طرح کے جو فرق ہیں وہ فراہی اسکول آف تھاٹ میں چلیں وہ بات ہے کہ حمید الدین فراہی صاحب جو ہے رحمۃ اللہ علیہ ان کا ایک تھاٹ ہے. پھر وہ تھوڑا سا ہمیں امین حسن اصلاحی صاحب جو ہیں ان میں چینج نظر آتا ہے، پھر غامدی صاحب جو ہیں ان میں بالکل چینج نظر آتا ہے. تو یہ فراہی اسکول آف تھاٹ جو ہے وہ ایک جگہ پر اس طرح سے اس کی مطابقت نہیں بن پاتی، یعنی اپنا اپنا تھاٹ. اب جیسے غامدی صاحب کا تھاٹ ہے تو اب تو بہت زیادہ پروپیگنڈا غامدیزم کے نام سے کیا جانے لگا ہے سوشل میڈیا پہ. تو غامدیزم تو نہیں ہے، یہ تو فراہی اسکول آف تھاٹ ہے.
جی
اور اس کی
جی، میں آپ کو
کانٹیکس
اس
اگر
کی
ہم قرآن کا
تفصیل
نظم جو ہے.
میں آپ کا سوال سمجھ گیا ہوں. دیکھیے فرائی اسکول بنیادی طور پہ کچھ اصولوں پر اتفاق کا نام ہے، یعنی کچھ ایسے اصول ہیں جن کو یہ تینوں اصحاب جن کا آپ نے نام لیا ان اصولوں کو درست مانتے ہیں، لیکن جب وہ ان اصولوں کو اپلائی کرتے ہیں تو اس میں فرق آ جاتا ہے، یعنی انڈرسٹینڈنگ میں فرق آ جاتا ہے. اصول ایک ہی ہیں لیکن جب فرائی صاحب اس اصول کو اپلائی کرتے ہیں تو وہ ایک نتیجہ بیان کر دیتے ہیں جو ہو سکتا ہے بعض دفعہ دونوں اصحاب سے فرق ہو، اور یہی معاملہ ان کا بھی ہے. تو یہ اصل میں صرف اتنی ہی بات ہے کہ آپ ایک چیز پر اتفاق کریں، وہ ہے کہ پرنسپلز آف انڈرسٹینڈنگ ایک ہیں، لیکن جب آپ ان کو پرنسپلز کو اپلائی کریں گے تو ہو سکتا ہے کہ میں اپلیکیشن میں ایک اور نتیجہ نکال لوں اور دوسرا کوئی اور نکال لیں، اور یہ آزادی ہر ایک کو موجود ہے. اور یہ بھی کوئی الہامی بات نہیں ہے کہ پرنسپل
لیکن یہ
بھی
دوسرے
ایک
اسکول آف
رہیں گے.
تھاٹ میں نہیں ہوتا نارملی، یہ
نہیں،
دوسرے
اس
اسکول
کی
آف
وجہ
تھاٹ میں اس طرح سے
نہیں
نہیں
اس
ہے.
کی اس کی وجہ یہ ہوتی ہے کہ وہاں پہ تھاٹ میں آزادی نہیں ہوتی. وہاں پہ مثلا امام ابو حنیفہ نے یا احناف نے اگر کوئی پرنسپل بھی طے کر دیا ہے اور اس کی اپلیکیشن بھی طے کر دی ہے تو کوئی آدمی اس کو چیلنج کرنے کا اس کو اختیار نہیں ہوتا. اس وجہ سے کوئی نیا پیدا ہی نہیں ہوتا. آپ کو ماننا پڑتا ہے کہ جی جو اصول ہے اور اس کا اطلاق ہے یہ دونوں ویسے ہی مقدس ہیں. جب اس چیز پر
یعنی
ڈبیٹ ہی نہیں ہو سکتی.
جی کولیکٹیولی ہم یہ کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ صرف اپلیکیشن کے پوائنٹ آف ویو سے اختلاف ہے،
جی ہاں،
ویسے کو نہیں ہے. جیسے طلاق کا
ویسے کوئی
میٹر ہے
نہیں.
تو 3 طلاقیں
جی
بجا کا وقت نہیں دے
اپلیکیشن ہے،
سکتے، اس
ہر
میں
جگہ
سب
پہ
کا
اپلیکیشن
اتفاق
کا
ہے.
ایسا ہی ہے.
جی جی جی.
Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
جو پہلے بھی بات ہو رہی تھی جو یونس کی آیت نمبر 47 ہے جہاں پر ذکر ہے کہ ہر امت میں ایک پیغمبر آیا. میں نے مجھے بھول گیا کتاب کا چھوڑا کتاب کا تھا پڑھا تھا کہ ہندوازم میں بھی وہ وہاں پر ایک پہلا تو ان کا وید ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ دوسرا کوئی
Muhammad Jamil, we can still hear you. Please mute yourself.
دوسرا پھر یہ ہے کہ اسی میں ذکر تھا کہ حضرت نوح علیہ السلام جو تھے وہاں پر آئے تھے. تو کیا اس کی کوئی تصدیق ہے کہ
نہیں، یہ کنجیکچر ہے، ابھی ہم پوری طرح سے تو نہیں کہہ سکتے لیکن اس کی بڑا اسٹرانگ امکان ہے کیونکہ جس زمانے میں وہ وید رہے ہیں اور خاص طور سے اس کے اندر جو توحید کا ایلیمنٹ اتنا اسٹرانگ ہے کہ اور کوئی چیز سمجھ میں نہیں آتی کہ وہ کیا چیز ہے جو اس توحید کو اتنا زیادہ زوردار طریقے سے ان کے ہاں بیان کر رہی ہے. تو اگر وہ براہ راست نہیں تھے تو کم سے کم ایسا ضرور لگتا ہے کہ ان کی تعلیمات کا اثر بہت رہا، اور وید جو ہیں اسی وجہ سے آپ کو توحید کی منادی کرتے ہوئے نظر آتے ہیں. تو لیکن یہ چونکہ ایک پری ہسٹورک چیز ہے، تاریخ کی روشنی میں نہیں ہے، تو ہم کوئی قطعی طور پہ تو بات نہیں کہہ سکتے، لیکن ہم یہ کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ اس کی اسٹرانگ پاسبلٹی ہے.
کیونکہ دیکھیں اللہ نے میرا سب اللہ نے کہا کہ ہر امت پہ ہم نے ایک نبی بھیجا. اس کی روشنی میں کہتا ہوں کہ پہلا
نہیں دیکھیں، پہلی بات تو یہ کہ امت کا ورڈ سمجھ لینا چاہیے نا. امت کا جو تعلق ہے وہ اس چیز سے ہے کہ یعنی آپ یوں سمجھیے کہ جو تاریخ کا دور ہے، جو نبوت کا دور ہے حضرت آدم سے لے کے نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم تک، اس میں جو امت کی ڈیفینیشن کیا ہے؟ گروہ کی. کہ مختلف علاقوں میں جو گروہ چلے گئے وہ امتیں بن گئے. یعنی امت سے مراد علاقائی گروہ ہیں کہ جہاں اب سیٹلمنٹ شروع ہو گئی، وہاں پہ ایک مناسب تعداد میں جو لوگ ہیں وہ جمع ہو گئے. تو وہاں پہ یہ ہم اس وقت یہ نہیں کہہ رہے کہ وہ جو امت ہے وہ لسانی بنیاد پہ بنی، وہ زبان کی بنیاد پہ بنی، وہ فلاں. یعنی اس زمانے میں اصل چیز علاقہ تھا. علاقہ میں جب لوگ چلے جاتے تھے تو وہ اس علاقے کو ایک لحاظ سے آباد کر لیتے تھے. تو جسے آپ انگریزی میں سویلائزیشن کہتے ہیں. جو سویلائزیشن ہے بیسیکلی اس کی مختلف رہی ہیں. انڈس ویلی سویلائزیشن رہی ہے، ادھر آپ کو معلوم ہے جو میسوپوٹیمیا وغیرہ عراق میں ایک اور سویلائزیشن رہی ہے. تو یہ بیسیکلی سویلائزیشن کا جو ورڈ ہے یہ امت کے لیے مجھے زیادہ موضوع محسوس ہوتا ہے کہ آپ اس کو سامنے رکھ کے جب امت کا ورڈ یوز کریں گے تو آپ کو معلوم ہوگا کہ ہر سویلائزیشن جو ہے اس کے اندر، یا ایک سب سویلائزیشن بھی آپ کہہ سکتے ہیں جو اس کا ایک سب سیٹ ہے، کہ وہاں اللہ تعالیٰ نے رسول بھیجے.
رسول وہاں پر آیا ہوگا، یہ نہیں ضروری کہ آئے ہوں.
بالکل. اور دیکھیں قرآن نے ایک اور بات کہی ہے کہ رسول قد قصصناہم علیک ورسول لم نقصصہم علیک، کہ بہت سارے وہ رسول ہیں جن کا ہم نے تمہیں بیان کر دیا ہے کہ وہ یہ اور یہ ہیں، کیونکہ عرب ان سے واقف تھے. قرآن تو عربوں کو مخاطب کر رہا ہے، تو بہت سارے وہ رسول جن سے عرب واقف ہی نہیں تھے لیکن وہ ایگزسٹ کرتے تھے. قرآن کہتا ہے کہ اس کو ہم نے مینشن ہی نہیں کیا اس لیے وہ ریلیونٹ نہیں ہے. इससे साफ मालूम होता है कि और रसूल भी थे जिनको कुरान मेंशन नहीं करता, लेकिन वो अरबों से चूंकि वाकफियत उनको नहीं थी, यानी अरब उनसे वाकिफ नहीं थे, तो कुरान ने उनको मेंशन नहीं किया। लेकिन ये तो मतलब नहीं है कि वो आए नहीं, वो मौजूद थे, लेकिन कुरान में उनका जिक्र नहीं है।
जज़ाकल्लाह खैर, शुक्रिया, बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया। थैंक यू।
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Next question comes from Saif Farouk. Please go ahead. And just a reminder, we're very short on time, so I'd like to request the remaining participants to keep their questions very concise. Thank you.
ओके, अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी, सैफ फारूक। ओके,
सलाम।
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि जैसे फराई स्कूल ऑफ थॉट्स ये कहता है कि जी दीन एक ही है, हजरत इब्राहिम से पहले भी बाद में भी। तो जब हुजूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम से पहले और हजरत इब्राहिम के बीच में, यानी कि जो हजरत ईसा और जो हजरत इब्राहिम के दूसरे बेटे जो थे, तो इनके मानने वाले भी अगर एक ही दीन था, तो फिर क्या वो भी ये बैतुल्लाह आए, कभी उन्होंने भी हज किया, उम्रा किया, या कोई ऐसी चीज भी है कहीं रिकॉर्ड में? मतलब अगर
जी,
एक
ऐसा
था
मिलता है।
दीन तो फिर तो
रिकॉर्ड में मिलता है, हजरत दाऊद के बारे में मालूम होता है कि वो आए, बल्कि बाज मुहक्किकीन ये बयान करते हैं इनकी कब्र भी उसी एरिया में पाई जाती है। सो हमें चूंकि वो
अच्छा।
दौर तारीख का वो है कि जिसके बारे में हमारा 100% मालूमात नहीं है, लेकिन हम यही कहेंगे कि जब से हज को मशरू करार दे दिया गया था, तो हज करने के लोगों ने जरूर कोशिश की होगी।
सही सही सही, बिल्कुल ठीक, सही है। थैंक यू।
Thank you very much. Naushad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, just a question. You just answered that ummat means different groups. I'm asking this question from another perspective, that Hazrat Adam was the first human as well as the first prophet. What was the need for a prophet so soon after creation? Had man gone
Right.
astray so much right at the beginning? And why was the need for a prophet being the first man?
So the first, Adam being the first prophet, in spite of the fact there could not have been any differences because mankind had yet to evolve, the reason for him being a prophet is not this that we generally think. Basically, he was the person or the first person who spoke to God. He was in communion with God, and this is one of the greatest evidences and proofs that the first human being was in communion with God, and this was transferred to his next generation as a proof that he spoke to God and he was in communion with God. He received his directives, and therefore the fact that there is a God is something which is evidenced by a human being is the real reason why he was made a prophet, so that his conversation with God and the way he conversed and was able to receive his guidance could become a legacy for the rest of mankind, that there's God exists. And the greatest proof, of course there are other proofs as well, but one of the proofs is that the person that he created with Eve was the person with whom he conversed, with whom he gave the first initial directives of civilization and mankind.
But sir, isn't the role of a prophet a harbinger of glad tidings and as a warner to humanity?
So,
rather
as
than
I said,
just
to start off, this was the reason, and then we know that in our earlier generations, people had very long lifespans. So this cannot be ruled out, but that when he lived for several hundred years maybe, and it can always be a possibility, keeping in view the fact that messengers are sent for this purpose of giving glad tidings and warning people, that many generations were born from him. So you see, in 1 century, normally we have 3 to 4 generations. So let's say if he lived for about 7 or 8 centuries, or maybe even more, you can well imagine that, there were maybe 40 or 50 generations that existed in his times, and he was their great, and God knows how we can pronounce that, their grandfather. And we cannot preclude the fact that differences might not have arisen, or maybe even the fact that these people, even if they had not gone fully astray, but they still needed these glad tidings and warnings.
Thank you
right,
very
sir,
much.
thank you very much.
This next question asks, in Islam, is Eve blamed for being shunned from heaven and being sent down to earth with Adam?
Certainly not. So basically, it is this biblical story, if you read the book of Genesis, which says that she misled Adam and she led Adam to eat the forbidden fruit. And Satan came in the form of a snake, and he also was guided by her. So this is a biblical story, a biblical, I would say, story of the origin of mankind, and the Quran does not say so. The Quran says that God the Almighty had already decided to send mankind, I mean, to send Adam to the face of the earth as a prophet and as a as a person who would start off the generation by through procreating between his wife, and that is all that it says. And this is not they were not sent because of any sin they did in the heavens. I mean that's another question. I mean that's a different scenario altogether. They did not if they did not honor God's promise, the promise that they made with God. It was yes, they were sent. They were told to go out and spread in the earth. That this does not mean that had they not committed this sin, this would not have happened. Because you see, if you look at the Quran in Surah Baqarah, you'll find out that even before this incident happened, and even before creating Adam, the conversation that took place between Adam and the angels tells us that the Almighty had conveyed to them that He is about to create someone who is going to be a person who will have the freedom to choose. And the angels actually debated with him and said that why would you want to create someone who is going to cause bloodshed on earth? Because he is given the freedom to choose and to freedom to exercise his will, then that is going to produce a lot of problems. So you see, the fact that Adam was or Eve were to be sent down to this earth, or maybe they had to inhabit this earth, this is something that was already in the plan of God, regardless of what happened regarding the forbidden tree.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, in your writing 5 Steps to Happiness, you suggest finding a purpose in one's life, but it's sometimes really hard to keep in focus with our purpose, and due to other reasons, someone might lose focus. So what do we do then, and how do we keep our mind and heart focused objectively?
Well, you see, this is a process of trial and error. To find a subject or a purpose in life and an objective of life is something which is something which our parents and our system of education should teach at a very young age when we are passing through school times, because that is the time when we are developing. And once we are able to gauge who we are, then of course we can set our own aptitude as a barometer of the aptitude that of the purpose in life that we should set ourselves. But in the absence of any such help from our system or from our parents, there are many tools which are being made today in the form of quizzes and questionnaires which help you in determining your purpose in life. So this determination of your purpose in life is something which is the biggest, I would say, thing that keeps you in focus. It keeps you on track, because you see, you're now finding an aim in your life. You're not wandering here and there. It's not that you have no purpose in life and you are just going along the tide of time. No, on the contrary, if you found that purpose in life, now you're going to plan your life accordingly. You're going to live your life accordingly. You are going to divide your time accordingly. So that focus that you're talking about is something that can really be obtained once you are able to do so. Once you are able to find out your own aptitude, your own personal ability, where or what you can do. And I've often talked about this, and I also would like to express this fact that one of the things that will let you know what your aptitude is the hobbies that you might have. See, your hobbies are a reflection of your inner inclination and aptitude. And secondly, your own environment will give you some feedback. Your friends, your family will tell you, well, you're good at this thing. And thirdly, if you win prizes or any acclaim or awards in a particular field, that again is a signal that you're good at certain things which have won acclaim. So this is how you are able to determine your own personal aptitude. So once you're able to determine that personal aptitude, that aptitude should then be used to fix an aim in life. So if you're a person about whom you're able to determine that, well, I have the aptitude of a good speaker, then you have this option of becoming a teacher or a preacher or a debater or so many other things that relate, or a public speaker or a politician. So these are skills which these people use. So you see, basically it is your inner inclination. What you have should be used. It is something that should govern the objective of life that you have. If you do not use your inner inclination and you set yourself some other objective, then this will be like wishful thinking or an ambition that you have in your mind, but it's not going to be fulfilled. Only those objectives are real which are in line, are in consonance with your inner ability. So the first thing is that you find your inner aptitude and inner capacity, and then in accordance with that ability and capacity, you determine your purpose in life.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have one more raised hand, but we're all out of time. So if you have a bit of extra time, we might
Yes,
take
please
that.
do so. Yes, we can do so.
Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead. Please make your question very concise.
Dr. Shehzad, the Quran addresses the Muslims, people of the book, and the idolaters. What about the rest of the religions, atheists, Buddhists? The Quran doesn't address them. What will happen to the faith of these people who the Quran has not addressed? What's going to happen to them after their death?
So
Do we
first
have
of
any
all,
idea?
the reason that the Quran has not addressed Hindus or Buddhists is that, I mean, the Quran is a book of dialogue. It's going to speak to people who are present in Arabia in the time of its revelation. So there were no Hindus or Buddhists in its times of revelation. So therefore, it did not speak to them. So because it's a live dialogue from God with people who were standing in front of Him in the land of Arabia, so only people who were there could have been discussed. Now, having said that, in spite of the fact that there are several denominations which are not discussed by the Quran, it does not mean that there is no guidance found about them, or we cannot determine anything about them. But on the contrary, if you are able to find out how God has conversed with Jews and Christians and the believers, from that very conversation, you can derive principles on the basis of which guidance can be obtained for any follower of any religion. So, I mean, there is one thing that they are not addressed, but this doesn't mean that because of a lack of address, there is no guidance for them. So that you have that indirect guidance available. You can draw analogy on the basis of those directives which are given to people who were present in the times of the Prophet in Arabia, and you can apply that guidance to other people who were not present.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all of the questions today. Thank you so much for staying extra time to answer the remaining questions, and thank you for taking the time to enlighten us with all the questions that we face in our day-to-day lives. Inshallah, see you all tomorrow in a session of textual study of the Quran. And until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.